Washington, the McLaughlin Group, the American original. For over 3 decades, the sharpest minds, best sources, hardest talk.
Issue 1. Next stop, New Hampshire.
Tonight,
Ted Cruz and Hillary Clinton took the first victories of the 2016 presidential election, winning the respective Republican and Democratic caucuses in Iowa this week. But February is a cruel master to presidential candidates. So, foregoing sleep, the campaigns jetted off to New Hampshire to mobilize supporters for Tuesday's primary. But while analysts say Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders are the likely victors come Tuesday, others also have much at stake, notably Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush. If Bernie Sanders defeats Mrs. Clinton by a significant margin, her campaign will lose the Big Mo, political momentum. And if Jeb Bush fails to score a respectable result, he will face calls to suspend his campaign and endorse Senator Marco Rubio.
If you've got something to say it directly. If I'm so fortunate as to be the nominee, first person I will call to talk to about where we go and how we get it done will be Senator Sanders.
Who has the most to gain and the most to lose from New Hampshire? Pat Buchanan.
I would say Marco Rubio has the most to gain, John. He came out of Iowa running third, but he got far more of a bump than Cruz did by winning it. And he is, as of now, he is moving closer and closer to Trump, maybe 10 points behind. So if he won New Hampshire, I don't think he's going to, but if he did, he would suddenly become the all-around favorite of the establishment in Washington, and he would be on his way to into the finals for the Republican nomination. Trump, I think, has the most to lose if he loses New Hampshire. But my guess is, John, Trump is going to win New Hampshire, and then it's going to move on down to South Carolina. And for a while, we're going to have a three-way race. What's going to happen, I think? Maybe Bush will go to South Carolina because of all his money. But I think we're going to have a lot of governors who don't survive New Hampshire. A lot of folks going to be leaving when next we meet.
Right. I think Trump and Cruz have the most to lose because they're now the front runners, and Cruz has to show that his Iowa win was not just a one-off, that he has some backing. The problem with Cruz is that a lot of people don't like him, and that's beginning to, I think, weigh his candidacy down. And I think Rubio clearly has the most to gain because he does seem like the most likely Republican nominee to actually gain some support from the general public. He's a very attractive guy. He's also a very untested, unexperienced guy, and I thought Chris Christie's comments calling him the boy in the bubble because all his events are very scripted, trying to make him look presidential. Rick Santorum, who dropped out of the race, took 3 minutes and couldn't come up with a single accomplishment that Rubio had in the U.S. Senate, and his campaign then released a list of his accomplishments, which were very weak and have been picked apart. So he's going to get his turn in the barrel. I think he could win New Hampshire, actually. On the Democratic side, I think Hillary and Bernie are they're tied. I think it's an energetic debate. I think their appearance together the other night is keeping a lot of interest in the race. I think Hillary Clinton is still the likely nominee. She's got to keep her cool and not attack Sanders too much because she really needs his supporters in November.
Tom Rogan.
Yeah, look, I think Marco Rubio clearly had that shocker in Iowa, and it's built up his momentum. I think more importantly, you see that consolidation from people like supporters for Jeb Bush, Kasich, Christie, moving towards Rubio. And I suspect that Pat is right, that if in New Hampshire Marco Rubio does well, and I think he's expected to do well, I think there's an outside chance he could even pull off a win there because of that big Mo momentum. I think you're going to see Jeb, Christie, Kasich, Kasich is kind of irrelevant, but that drop off and that vote moving to Rubio. And I would say one disagreement with Pat, though, as much as Pat would say it's the Washington candidate, if you put those votes together of the Christie, Bush block, Kasich, alongside Rubio, you very quickly get a sizable figure for Marco Rubio that I think puts him at the front of the race.
Will the revelations about the Cruz campaign's Iowa blunt his momentum in New Hampshire? Is Trump justified in saying that Cruz stole the Iowa election? I ask you, Ron Grimm.
No, he's not justified in saying that. But what's so remarkable about Donald Trump is his ability, with just a few tweets, to just create the next 12 hours of what the campaign cycle is going to be all about. The second that I saw him do a little Twitter storm attacking Ted Cruz for stealing the election, you knew that was going to be the thing that the cable networks are going to focus on, that the candidates are going to start getting asked about on the ground. And so it does throw Ted Cruz's game off. And his entire strategy this whole time has been to kind of wait out everybody else and be one of the last two standing. So he'd be the anti-establishment guy running up against a Marco Rubio or whoever the establishment decides to put up. So he has a ton to lose here if Donald Trump sticks around and it becomes a Donald Trump versus whoever they put up there.
Does it make or break time for Jeb Bush?
Yeah, he's broken. So that he was broken several months ago. He has $100 million to carry him forward, but he's broken.
Yeah, John, let me talk about there's something very major going on in this country, though. Look, we were talking, Trump got 5,000 people at Milford, New Hampshire. These mammoth crowds he's got are incredible, and Cruz is part of this sort of revolution taking place against the Capitol and everything. And Bernie is a revolution against the Democratic establishment. If both these campaigns fail and you wind up with a Rubio versus Hillary, you got a whole half of America which had all its enthusiasm up, wholly alienated. I don't know how you govern.
You can speak for the Republican
like
side, but the Democratic side does not have to end up that way. First of all, they're not angry at the Democratic establishment. They're angry at the political system as a whole, as a whole. And I think I think in the end, if Sanders doesn't get the nomination, I don't expect that he will, he's going to be out there telling his people to go with Hillary, and whoever the Republicans nominate are going to get those people energized and engineered. How?
Yeah, I don't see
but
any.
How? They're not going to want a Republican government.
I don't know how. I don't see any great enthusiasm. Cruz has got a lot. I agree. And Trump has, it's just enormous, these crowds. But the other Republicans are just, nobody would, have little crowds watching those debates if it weren't for those guys.
Well,
exit question. Who will win New Hampshire's primaries? Name the first place winner on each side, please.
Well, I missed Iowa on both, so I'm going to go with Trump in New Hampshire, and Bernie with a good margin.
Sanders in New Hampshire, though Hillary's going to close that margin somewhat, and Trump, but I would not be surprised if Rubio won.
I'm just to roll the dice out there and hopefully get on the Daily Show like our estimable colleague Clarence. I'm going to say Rubio and Sanders.
What's this about the Daily Show?
Clarence was featured because he got the correct predictions.
Oh, I see. Good.
I think Rubio does surge for a shocking win, and I think Hillary will actually surge too.
You think she's going to win?
I think she might take him out in New Hampshire.
That's bye-bye Bernie if that happened.
Yeah.
The answer is very simple. It's Trump and Sanders.
Well, that's what I told you, John. You picked it right up on her. Very
Picked it
good.
right up. But there it was in front of me, laying there, coughing up blood. Issue 2, message in a tank.
It will be a timely and significant contribution to NATO's deterrence and collective defense. This proposal is a vivid demonstration of the strength of our transatlantic bond.
President Obama took charge of the Oval Office 7 years ago. He promised a positive reset in relations with Russia, but with the radioactive poisoning of a British spy in London, the downing of passenger jets over Europe, and the aggressive advances of Russian forces from Ukraine to Syria, President Putin of Russia has rebuked Mr. Obama. So, this week, Commander-in-Chief Obama announced a quadrupling of U.S. military spending in Europe, $2.9 billion. This new money will be spent deploying U.S. military forces into NATO member states, including Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Is this a prudent or a provocative move by President Obama? Patrick Buchanan.
John, the question is who started Cold War II, and I think we did. The Soviets, they gave up all of Eastern Europe. The whole thing came apart. They wanted to be friends and allies of the United States, so we moved NATO right into the Baltic republics, 3 of which, these Baltic republics, were part of the Soviet Union. Putin is reacting to that. He's got a tremendous military or significant military buildup, and now we're reacting to that. John, my view is, I am not against, frankly, a next president trying a real reset that respects Russian national interests. They respect ours, and we get away from this face-off, for heaven's sakes. Any kind of war between the United States and Russia over Estonia would be the end of Estonia and a disaster that every great president of the Cold War avoided.
Well, first of all, the expansion of NATO happened under Bill Clinton and was approved of by his successors, including Republican President George W. Bush. So this is not a policy that Barack Obama.
It's not. Say it was Obama.
No. But when Obama took office, he dealt very well with Putin's predecessor, Mr. Medvedev, and we had a few good years there. And then Putin came in there flexing his muscles. So you think Obama should just sit back and say, okay, that's fine with us? He's getting a lot of requests from the Europeans. The Baltic nations are really nervous about all of the little needling by Putin, who's
And
trying to compensate for this.
Germans going to be sending a lot of troops in there too?
I don't think we want Germany beefing up their
So we do it ourselves.
military. Yes, yes. We have strategic interests there.
In Estonia?
We have
When
in
did
that
we
whole
develop?
area.
When did we have
Estonia is a
strategic
NATO,
interests
is a
in
member of
Estonia?
NATO.
I used to write captive nations resolutions
Well,
pleading for let these little countries go one of these days. I
Yeah.
never
All right, let me
believed
get in
it
here.
would
Let
happen.
me
40
get
years
in
ago,
here.
Now it's a
Pat,
strategic
40 years
interest.
ago, well,
So
the
here's a way that
situation
we
has
can
changed.
balance it. Pat is absolutely right that the European Union has done far too little. I say pull out the bases from Germany, put them into Poland. It would be more affordable, but it would also send a signal that the United States backs up allies who are willing to carry some of the weight of international security. The Germans spend far too little on defense. At the same time, now, I would fundamentally disagree with Pat. I think the nature of the United States in terms of self-determination, Putin is pushing now because he senses he can push. He didn't push it with George W. Bush because he senses he couldn't. But because of the United States' dealings with Russia, and I would specifically point there to what happened in the deal with Assad with chemical weapons, which was a fake deal, and everyone knows it was a fake deal, the credibility deficit is such that Putin keeps pushing the line. How do you balance against having a war with the Russians? You challenge them on the financial front, but you also challenge their front companies run by Russian intelligence in Europe with covert action.
If you're talking economic sanctions, if Russia misbehaves, I agree 100%. But the idea that you're going to fight him. As for Assad, look, Russia is in there backing the legitimate government, recognized government of Syria. We're supporting the rebels. Our enemies, ISIS, we got our allies are helping in some cases the wrong side. It's a mess.
You're conflating. You can still work with Putin in that area.
Sure, we work with him.
But a little display of force in Europe where our European allies are demanding it, begging it, it's a good idea.
Let's nail it down a little bit. What moves is President Obama taking to bolster Europe against Russia? You with me on that?
Well, he's doing what Putin wants, because Putin is weak at home, and that's why he's pushing abroad at the moment. Whenever a strong guy's looking weak, then he needs to find some enemies that he can push around to try to rally his country behind him. So putting all of these military resources up against him just allows him to prop himself up and say, look, see, here comes the United States.
The Russian people love him standing up to the United States
because
because they think we double-cross them at the end of the Cold War.
Well, somewhere out there, Mitt Romney is doing a high five because the Pentagon just put Russia as the top military threat to the U.S.
Where are they going to attack the U.S. now?
Romney predicted that in
Why
one
are
of
they
the
a threat
debates.
to the United States?
Because of their undercutting of balance of power politics in Europe, because of their undercutting of democratic values, because they support the slaughter of innocent people, because they break our credibility
Well, you think
with
democratic
our allies.
values, what do you think our Egyptian allies are doing right now?
And I agree. I agree with that. But so you can have that it's not a binary thing. You go one or the other. You can have political.
The key thing to
bolstering.
avoid.
All
we
talking
got
about
three powers. The greatest vital interest is the United States and China and Russia avoid some kind of mess like the Germans and the Brits got into twice in the last century and finish themselves
Do you
off.
not think it's more likely, though, if we give him that sense of opportunity, that conflict comes?
He will build up. He will be delighted with what we're doing because he can match it 3 times over from his own base.
Question, what moves is President Obama taking in Asia to counter China?
He's moving his boats around the South China Sea again, fooling around with these tiny islets that are claimed by Paracels and Spratlys, claimed by 6 countries. It's not our quarrel.
He's also working with China on climate change, big issues. Not, this is not one policy fits every area. Pat, you're generally an isolationist, I think.
No, I just don't want to get into another war.
Neither do I, and I don't think Obama is doing any. This is under the label of deterrence.
75% are effective at that. A huge amount of international trade flows through those waters. So
if the Chinese interfered with our trade, I agree with you. Use the Navy, but if they don't, forget the islands.
But what if those islands become it gets to the point where they're fortresses? It becomes much more difficult to interfere.
The Vietnamese are making a fortress out of some of them. The Philippines are. Taiwan just sent one into Taiping. They got one of the islands they claim. Stay out of these quarrels.
Issue 3, Kurds, Turks, and Geneva. Representatives of warring factions met in Geneva this week, hoping to end a Syrian civil war that has raged for nearly 5 years and taken 230,000 lives. But their hopes were in vain. With no progress, the talks were postponed to late February. Here are the challenges. First, Turkey has launched a bloody crackdown on Kurdish activists, terrorists, and civilians. Second, Russia continues to support Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad in his campaign against Syrian Sunnis, which encourages Sunnis to fight his regime. Third, Turkey and Sunni Arab nations like Saudi Arabia continue to support Sunni rebel groups. Fourth, ISIS is using this political chaos to retain its power across northern and eastern Syria. Analysts fear that if peace continues to remain elusive, innocents across Syria, Turkey, and various refugee camps will endlessly suffer. Question, who are the Kurds, I ask you, Ryan Grimm?
The Kurds are people in the northern Iran, you've got northern Iraq, you've got parts of Syria and parts of Turkey. They're one ethnicity, but there are a lot of kind of political coalitions going on here. The Iraqi Kurds and the Syrian Kurds are not necessarily always on the same page, but when they're up against an enemy like ISIS, they're going to unite. The big problem that we have over there right now is that you have 2 conflicts going on at the same time. You got these 20th century conflicts, these old grievances that we can't move past, combined now with the new 21st century ISIS grievance. So you've got Turkey and the Kurds battling each other like it's still the 1980s or 1990s. You've got Russia and the United States squaring off in Syria, and you've got Russia now propping up the government so effectively that the government is pulling out of peace talks because they see victory on the horizon. They think, why are we going to sit down and talk to these quote-unquote moderate rebels if we can just wipe them out in the next several months?
They could defeat the moderate rebels up at Aleppo. Just this week, the Syrians are making a real move. But the problem is, as you mentioned, as the Turks see the Kurds, especially in southeastern Turkey, as the enemy, they hate the Kurds who are in Syria and the gains they're making. But those Kurds are our allies in fighting ISIS. As for the Saudis, they want to bring down Assad. Now, Assad is a dictator and a malevolent one, but at the same time, he and his army and Hezbollah and Iran and the Russians are the bulwarks against ISIS taking over Damascus. And so it's a very complex situation, John, and everybody's got their own enemies, and I think we ought to say we want to defeat ISIS first.
Yes, well, we're saying that, but the president is keeping his distance from what he doesn't want to get any more involved in the chaos that's over there.
And it's not even clear who Turkey hates more, ISIS or the Kurds.
Right. Or Assad.
As soon as they seem fine with Assad, and they seem fine with ISIS.
I would say the opportunity for the United States, though, I think we could have more influence with Erdogan because the Turkish have before formed these essential compromises with different Kurdish groups, including the more hardline groups, the PKK.
But the Turks have told the Kurds, if you cut off the final
Right.
supply lines into Syria, we're coming in after you.
But if you could align the Turks to essentially, this is the key, to put pressure on Assad and the Russians and Iran to have a diplomatic compromise where the Russians can retain their bases, Latakia and Tartus. But the problem at the moment is that they're pushing north right onto Aleppo and slaughtering people. They're not just defending
they
Damascus.
want to win the war.
Well,
No, but they're going to kill
Imagine that.
Right, but the Sunnis are going to join ISIS, right?
well,
Question. Who's calling the shots in Syria today?
Russia.
Is it Putin
Well,
or President Obama?
Russia has stepped in and has changed the tide, because I think Assad was approaching his last legs. The Iranians have been bleeding in there. Hezbollah's been bleeding. And the Russians came in with the air power, and they really did something with it. They pounded the rebels, and now they're probably going to take back Aleppo.
Russia has been an historic ally of Syria, so this is not suddenly like he's coming into the U.S.'s backyard.
Right.
So I would say let Russia have at it, and Obama should keep on what he's doing, which
like
is
Trump.
not very much.
You sound like Trump.
Sounds like Bernie Sanders too, and Hillary Clinton.
Doesn't
I think.
sound
She
good.
would like
Doesn't
to
sound
protect some
good to
refugees.
tens of thousands
No,
of Syrian civilians. Though, does it?
Nobody wants to send
A
U.S.
quick
troops
exit
in.
question. Has the time come for Obama to cut his losses in Syria and embrace the Assad regime?
No.
Yes or no?
I think that's a good question, John, in this sense. Look, if the moderate rebels are defeated, we should try to get a ceasefire and get them protected and get out, and basically everybody go after ISIS.
The diplomatic settlement will be on the condition that Assad is removed.
If we can get that, that would be perfect. I worry, though, that that's possible now.
Eventually.
Right. Assad's not going anywhere. We had 4 or 5 years to make that happen. It didn't happen.
Good. I'm glad. Issue 4, research, mosquitoes, and Zika.
If we aggregate all this data in one place that's readable and accessible for scientists, researchers, and physicians, then the consensus is we can, in fact, speed up research advances and improve access to cures.
Vice President Joe Biden is pushing scientists to share their research more openly. Some scientists say sharing research enables more effective cancer treatment, but others fear this sharing lowers the proprietary value of a scientist's work and so reduces research incentives. Yet, improved medical research is urgent. Consider that the WHO, World Health Organization, has declared the Zika virus outbreak a global emergency. Zika has infected over 1 million people in the Americas, mostly in Brazil, and is transmitted by the specific Aedes genus of mosquitoes. Note that Zika can be sexually spread and has been linked to microcephaly, or underdeveloped brains in babies. Should scientists listen to Joe Biden and share more research? PJ.
John, there's a real conflict here. Many pharmaceutical companies and other scientists, they spend their whole lives and they develop something, and it's a drug, and it's a miracle drug, and it can cure a tremendous amount. And so they want to be rewarded, and the reward is also an incentive to do more. At the same time, people want to use these drugs immediately and more broadly in a humanitarian sense. So there's a real conflict of legitimate interests here, and I do think it's one where the government should move in, and if they have to, reward the scientists for what they've done. At the same time, you make
I think there are two issues here. Somebody has to be incentivized to try to really quickly get a vaccine for Zika. It is a horrible affliction to bring babies into the world with small heads and brain damage, and I think it should make some countries question some of their abortion policies, because if you don't know that you're carrying this child and you discover you are, I think abortion is a very reasonable procedure. But what Joe Biden is doing, he got interested in cancer because his 46-year-old son was dying of cancer, and he had access to and talked to leading physicians and scientists around the country, and he realized they're doing different things here, and if they talk to each other, we could get along much quicker, perhaps, to finding cures to various kinds of cancer, and it's the moonshot to cancer. So I think that's a different issue from sort of mobilizing to get a vaccine.
You're giving away the information you got, which is
you ought to be able to get scientists to talk to each other, just the way we got the FBI and the National Security. Excuse me,
there's a conflict. I mean, people are working independently to be
not a
great
conflict.
people.
The goal is to find cures to diseases that are tragedy for many people, and if scientists ought to be able to share their information towards that goal.
The question was, how serious is the Zika outbreak? The answer is, it's a serious enough health threat that if it isn't contained before the Summer Olympics, where?
In Brazil. Right.
Brazil, August the 6th in Brazil, it may spread to every country on the globe. As a precautionary measure, the Olympics may have to be canceled if Brazil's efforts at mosquito eradication fail. You find that enlightening?
I think it has to be left to the global health professionals. But I think that there are ways to incentivize behavior among scientists that are removed from profit. Profit is not the only way and not the only reason that people act in this world. The government has a huge role to play here, and if they step in, and if global governments step in and offer rewards for the types of breakthroughs on rare diseases where there isn't an obvious profit motive.
Predictions, Pat.
When next we meet, Chris Christie will be gone from the race, and he will not go quietly.
Eleanor.
If Hillary Clinton doesn't release the transcripts of her paid speeches, the issue will dog her, just like her emails.
Tom.
When next we meet, Jeb Bush will be gone.
Ryan.
Marco Rubio wins the GOP nomination, gets crushed in the general, and buys a $10 million boat.
China's economy is in for a hard landing. At Davos, George Soros said it is, quote, almost inevitable, unquote, in Switzerland. And he's right on the money. Bye-bye.